quitting were an Olympic sport, I would have the gold medal. And the reason for that is because I've had and I've quit over 20 different jobs. What's your immediate thought when you hear of someone having over 20 jobs? It's probably a negative one, right? Bit of a red flag, can't hold down a job, maybe I'm not the most reliable worker. Well, I think differently. Now, mind you, I had and I quit all of my 20 jobs by the age of 21. Kind of impressive. Or maybe you think otherwise, when most people in their lifetime probably won't ever have anywhere near 20 jobs. I was out here, left, right and centre, new job every day by the age of 21. So what did 20 jobs look like for me anyway? It meant 20 different managers, 20 different workplaces, 20 different sets of co-workers, and 20 different opportunities to figure out the best possible way of taking the absolute piss without getting caught. And let me tell you, I got kind of good at it. I was the ideal applicant. I would show up to job interviews throwing around the words like team player and fast learner. Looking back, there were definitely some times where I also think I got myself jobs that I was probably nowhere near qualified enough to do. For example, when I was 19, I'd had probably 15 jobs by this point already, and I was in Newcastle, but I had that idea, I need to get out. I don't know what it is, but like those of us that are from a small regional city, I feel like at some stage we always go through that period of thinking we need to get out and like see the world. So I packed my car to the roof and I drove to Brisbane. As soon as I got there, I got myself a job working in a restaurant because I'd had about 8 hospitality jobs, so I could get them like that. And while I was working at the restaurant, I was just bulk applying for roles online. And by this stage in life, I thought I'm destined to work a 9 to 5, Monday to Friday admin role. So I'm online, applying for jobs, and one day my phone rang. Hello, Brittney. Yeah, this is Jade calling from XYZ Company. We got your online application, we loved it, and we were wondering if you'd be available for an interview this Thursday. I said, oh yes, Jade, of course. Sorry, where did you say that you were calling from again? She said, I'm calling from G. James Glass and Aluminium. I said, oh yes, G. James. Who's that? Oh, yeah, I would love to come in. All right, I'll see you on Thursday. For some reason, I didn't think to Google G. James, but I showed up to the interview on Thursday full of confidence and enthusiasm as always, thinking, yeah, I've got this one in the bag. This is just going to be some small family-run business. And as I got inside, I realised, oh, shit, this is an Australia-wide company. All of a sudden, I was feeling a little bit out of my depth. And mind you, this job that I was applying and interviewing for was to be a personal assistant to the big boss there. And the only admin experience I had was probably 5 minutes in my last job in Newcastle, which was at a pest control company. I thought, maybe I'm not going to get this one. But I found myself sat across from Tony and Jade, and I did the interview. And I kind of walked out of there afterwards feeling confident. But it kind of just felt like we were laughing the whole time. And I left thinking, oh, I'm not sure if I've got this one. Less than a week later, my phone rang. Britt, it's Tony. We'd love to offer you the role. And I remember saying to him, Tony, I've got to ask, why did you pick me? And he said, look, I'm going to be honest with you, Britt. We had over 200 people apply for this role. A lot of them had uni degrees, which I didn't. A lot of them had years of experience, which I also didn't. But you were the only one that made us laugh. And it was in that moment that I realised, hey, maybe you don't always have to be the most qualified to get your foot in the door. And quitting, it isn't always the end either. Sometimes it's just the very beginning. Now, thinking back, in every single job that I had, I was always great. for the first few weeks, or maybe months if I was lucky, depending, I would be excited, I'd show up early, my shirt was ironed, and I was eager to learn. But within those first few weeks, or maybe months, it's like I would develop a mysterious allergy to everything in the workplace. A sense of authority? I'm covered in a rash. My customer service voice? Gone. The sight of my manager walking towards me to have a little chat? Oh, all of a sudden, I gotta go home. I feel sick. This happened in every single place that I worked. It was like a little switch would go off in my brain and I would all of a sudden hate the place. And I remember thinking, is there something wrong with me? Like, yeah, it's normal for us to not enjoy work, I guess. Can anyone actually say that they truly love work? But I absolutely hated it. And I hated it so much that I remember being vocal on social media about it. I don't know about anyone else, but I love a Facebook memory. I check my Facebook memories every morning like it's the paper. And every year, this one memory pops up from 2011. And I said, I hate working in general, no matter where it is. I hated it that much that I was posting it on social media. Also, I thought I hated it. Because when I think back to when I was a really young kid, even at the age of 6 or 7, I remember being obsessed with the idea of doing something in exchange of earning money. I was that kid that would be begging my mum and dad, please, can I do something around the house for $5? Anything, I'll make my bed, I promise. I should have been doing that anyway. I was obsessed with the idea of working. I was also that kid that would, set up a little stall out the front on the footpath and try and sell my secondhand stuff or maybe my Easter eggs from last weekend because I didn't finish them all. I loved the idea of doing something in exchange of money, and it was so confusing for me to be, working all these jobs and hating them. What is wrong with me? When I was 13, I remember being so excited that I was nearly 14 in 9 months, so I could go and get my first job ever finally. I counted down that year to 14 and the months and the weeks in the lead up. And as soon as I turned that 14 and 9 months, I filled out that online application for Macca's, and I was straight down to my local Macca's at the age of 14 and 9 months. I was that kid that was going to school and working 5 or 6 nights a week, and I absolutely loved it. I remember my first paycheck at Macca's, it was something like $90, and I thought, I've hit the jackpot. I am rich. Mind you, I probably did 6 shifts to get that back then. But I loved the idea of working for a little bit. That feeling of hating working trickled in when I was at Macca's. 15 years old, and I'm thinking, all of a sudden, I don't like this place. How do I not like working here? You're supposed to get your first job and love it and stay there for a while. And here I was at the age of 15, considering quitting my first job 2 seconds after I got it. So what did I do? I did that. I got a second job. I went there for a little while, got over it after 5 minutes, went on to the next. By the age of 15, I was already on to job number 3. And society would tell me that that's a bad thing, right? Don't be a quitter. We've been brought up thinking that quitting is a bad thing. That's going to look bad on your resume. What will your boss say? You just got this job 1 month ago, Brittney. How could you possibly want to quit it? I quit every single job I had from such a young age. Probably the most random job that I had would have been when I was 18. I got a job working at the Great Aussie Bush Camp. Now, I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with that place, but it's your stereotypical school camp. I'd tried everything by that point, so I thought, what have I got to lose? Mind you, I'm not into camping and I'm not into sports. The only thing that I'm actually good at throwing is in the towel. But lo and behold, I found myself standing at the Aussie Bush Camp, lanyard and whistle around my neck, and I was teaching kids how to do canoeing and the high ropes and all sorts of stuff, when the only real obstacle that I was actually facing was surviving another day in that place without quitting. Turns out, if you're not really a fan of camping or sports, you probably shouldn't take up a job teaching both. Quitting for me was absolutely inevitable. Now, by this time, you know I've had and quit over 20 jobs. But let me tell you about one of my biggest quits of all, YouTube. When I was in high school, probably year 8, I discovered this new website called YouTube. And there was a couple of people on there making videos, and I thought, you know what? I want to do that. In case you can't work out by this point, I was that kid that was just willing to give anything a go. So I made a YouTube channel in year 8. I thought, yep, I'm going to be great at that. And I made silly little videos at home. It was nothing but a creative outlet. And I worked on making those YouTube videos all throughout my teens and into my early 20s while I was working my 20 jobs and figuring out what it was that I wanted to do with my life. And by the age of 21, I'd managed to turn that little hobby into 80,000 subscribers. Now, in 2025, that probably isn't all that impressive of a number, but back then it was kind of turning into something. And at the time, I was working full-time in a Monday to Friday role in Newcastle, and my boss at the time, he knew about my YouTube channel because I'd started to earn a little bit of money from the ads that would play, like a little bit of pocket money. And we'd kind of joke about my YouTube channel together, and he'd also say things to me like, oh, if you're starting to earn a bit of money off this thing, what if you could turn it into your full-time job? And I'd be sitting there at my desk like, don't say that because I bloody will do it. Can you guess what I did? I quit my full-time job. Now, all of my quits up until this point in life were quick. No matter where I worked, that moment that switch flicked in my brain and I knew, yep, this wasn't right for me, I just quit without a thought, even though that's a bad thing, right? I did the same when it came to my full-time job. I kid you not, I think I sat on the idea for maybe 2 nights. I didn't confide in anyone that I knew. I just remember sitting down and going, okay, rent for my share house is this much, petrol is this much, groceries is that much. If I quit my stable full-time job, I don't even know if I'm going to have enough money to do all of those things, but I'll figure it out. What's the worst that's going to happen, right? The worst thing was going to be me going to get another job, which I was a professional at doing by this point anyway. So I texted my boss and I said something along the lines of, hey, I quit. Sorry about that. Was that unprofessional of me? Yeah, and sorry to my boss. But was it very on brand of me to do that? Absolutely. And let me tell you, quitting my secure full-time job at the age of 21 was one of the best decisions that I've ever made. Within a year of quitting my full-time job and putting my everything into that YouTube channel, I managed to turn those 80,000 subscribers into a few 100,000. And what was once something that paid me a little bit of money, I started to earn a decent income from. Within 3 years of quitting my full-time job, I somehow managed to turn that YouTube channel into over 1 million subscribers. I'd made it. I was one of the first influencers in the country. I was working for myself. I was sleeping in until 11 a.m. and I was barely doing any work. And mind you, when I had 1 million subscribers on YouTube, I was getting paid hundreds and thousands of dollars a year through ads and brand deals. I was living the dream. And when I quit my full-time job, my dream was to eventually land myself a role that would pay me $1,000 a week. I'd done it. But guess what? That thought came trickling back into my mind. What was once a little hobby of mine in high school had turned into a money-making machine. And to the outside, I was living the dream life, right? I was an influencer. But that feeling came back. I don't know if I want to do this forever. And I remember questioning myself, thinking, how can I be feeling this way about something that is so amazing? I think I want to give it up. I always knew that being an influencer wasn't sustainable. So in my early 20s as well, much like all the other things that I had tried, I thought, while I'm in the midst of this YouTube thing, I'm going to start a small business. I'm going to get into the world of e-commerce. Mind you, I had no idea what I was doing, but I started a small women's fashion brand in the garage underneath my house, and I decided to call it Fate. And I was doing my YouTube thing and packing my orders in my garage. I hired my first casual employee to come and help me pack orders in the garage, and I was juggling both there for a while. While that thought came into my mind, I think I want to walk away from the YouTube channel, which was crazy. And I did eventually give it up. But the difference with giving up YouTube was that it wasn't one of my quick quits. It was a slow one. I sat on the idea of quitting something great for probably 1 to 2 years. I remember going to my accountant and saying, hey, I've got this influencer thing that I'm doing, and then my small business, which I'm still figuring out. I think I want to throw that one away and put everything into the business. And my accountant was going, I mean, you can, but that's a lot of money. Why would you give that up? You could just do both. But I eventually did it. I walked away from a YouTube channel of over 1 million subscribers and the hundreds of thousands of dollars it was paying me to put my all into my business. When we think of quitting, we often think of quitting something bad, right? Like walking away from a toxic boss, a relationship that's no longer serving you. But if there's anything I've learned, is that sometimes the bravest quit is walking away from something good. And again, much like quitting my full-time job, quitting YouTube was one of my best quits ever as well. Because what once started as a few plastic tubs with singlets in them on my garage floor, later on turned into the 8-figure empire that I run today. And Fate is one of Australia's fastest growing and most recognised women's fashion brands. All because I quit YouTube and all because I quit all of those jobs. But what about the micro quits? I've told you today about all of my big quits, and there's been a lot. But there were many micro quits along the way as well. To get to where I am, I had to quit the idea of people pleasing. If I had worried about what people would think, or if I'd worried about upsetting people, I'd probably still be back at Aussie Bush Camp. I also had to quit the idea of what success was supposed to traditionally look like. I have not had a traditional career path. If you look at my resume, it's not a career path. It's like a lucky dip. You never know what you're going to get with my resume. And the last micro quit, and perhaps the hardest of all, I had to quit the fear of failing. How many of us simply don't do something because we're too scared that it won't work out? Can you imagine if I'd had that fear with any of my quits? Oh, I won't quit my full-time job because what if it doesn't work out? I had to quit the fear of failing. So I want to leave you with this. Quitting isn't weakness. Quitting is clarity, because all of my quits have landed me on this very stage here today. So my question to you today is this: what is something that you need to quit? Not because you've given up or because you've failed, because deep down inside, you know that it's no longer right for you. Quitting doesn't make you a failure. Quitting makes you free. And sometimes quitting will be the most powerful thing you will ever do.